Hello and welcome to Out the Broom Cupboard with myself, Carly of Bardware. Hi all, hope you're all well. Welcome to another episode of the jolly old Chatty Rambles. I started recording, in fact I recorded a whole 18-minute podcast and then decided it wasn't good enough. I actually deleted it because I was like listening back and thinking, oh no, it's just it's not getting across exactly what I want to get across. I was umming and ahhing and I couldn't quite explain what I wanted to explain. I couldn't find the words to do it, and I thought, well, it's obviously just not meant to be, is it, just yet? So I actually ended up deleting that. So episode 6 is now completely different to what I was originally doing, which was, the original one was about guides and what we class as a spirit guide. I know it's a tag on how we find them and that type of thing. So it was a bit like, some people I know have found spirit guides have been in middle of meditation, or they've been in meditation to seek their spirit guides and they've asked them to come forward. Well, none of that stuff happened with me. I didn't sit in meditation seeking my spirit guides, asking them to come forward. It was completely different. So the true to form spirit guide showing themselves was completely different to me, and sometimes I think, am I doing it right? I think we all have this. We all have this whole, am I doing it right? Now, why are we saying that to start with? Am I doing it right? There's no right and wrong way, is there? There is no right and wrong way. There is no, am I doing it right? It's your way and that's the way it goes, and it's your path. And if you're working spiritually, or you're on a spirit path and you haven't got spirit guides, or you don't feel as though you've got spirit guides, or they haven't come through and made themselves known and gone, I am your great chief whoever, then it doesn't matter. It's not a massive issue. But yeah, I was doing those and I couldn't find the words for it. So it was like, well, obviously I'm not quite meant to sit there and chat about it. But another subject that came up just recently, I was having a chat with someone and we were talking about what we believe in, as in, God, gods, a collection of deities, that type of thing. Is there a God? Is it humans that created a God and gods? And it was really interesting because I don't know those that you know, but Bardware, obviously a little pagan stall as well. And I've just recently created the archetype oracle cards, working on the 12 archetypes from Carl Jung's theory of the human psyche. And he was quite spiritual. He worked with Sigmund Freud and they then fell out, and Carl Jung went his own way, and he actually had a red book that he wrote everything down in, and it's actually been published, and they use that with psychology students that read Carl Jung's red book, because he looked at the more spiritual side of things. So he was really interested in his experiences that he had on a spiritual side, which is, quite cool, to be fair. So I stumbled across an audio listen course. I was given it free. You've signed up for our app, have a free audio course. I'm like, yeah, cool, beautiful. And it come up, Jungian archetypes. I was like, well, what the hell's that? I have no idea. Never stumbled across this before. I thought, well, okay, I'll click play. So I clicked play, and I was walking out. It's the first time I've ever had anything massively channeled, and it was to the point of the urgency of trying to write this down. I literally ran in the back door of my house, grabbed the scruffiest piece of paper I think I could probably have ever laid my hands on, and I couldn't do it again if I tried. Found the pen that never works. The first pen you pick up never works. Finally found a pencil, because it was like, that's going to work. Lucky enough it was sharp. It wasn't I was quite lucky there. And it was the most channeled set of cards ever, because listening to that, I was listening to the archetypes, and they're broken down into 4 categories, and there's three archetypes in each category, so there's 12. There is there's a yin and the yang to everything, so there was sort of the positive and the negative, so you could take it further if you want. But I could see the cards, I could see the whole thing, I could see the pictures, I could see I could just see absolutely everything. I could see the pictures, I could see what they were supposed to be, I could see the bullet notes on it, I could see putting the 3 archetypes in their own colour set. I could see the colours, I could see the whole thing. I mean, massively channeled. I turned them out literally very quick. They're all home produced, and I literally did them within a week. And I've never ever channeled anything like that before in my life. So it was just, it was really, really interesting. So I ended up having a conversation with someone the other day that actually touched on the possibility of the Carl Jung's theory. I say we were talking about gods and goddesses, and God as in the Christian God, and what we believe in, and the universe, and is there a higher entity, and is there something else out there? And I sort of saying to them, I said, well, as human beings, in this current state that we are, because we all know that we're something else, really, we're something else. So as I got told by lovely Mrs. Audrey Lady once, she turned around and said to me, you do realise this is just a travelling device, don't you? So an 89-year-old turned around and looked at me and said that, and I was completely gobsmacked, and I still say that to this day. I still hold that piece of information, that piece of knowledge that she passed on to me is amazing, because I literally looked at her and went, oh, excuse me. I was like, I'm having this conversation with this 89-year-old lady who I didn't think thought out the box like that. Anyhow, I shouldn't have made the assumption. Naughty me. I've learned not to make assumptions like that. So she said, you do realise this is just a travelling device, and it is the body is just a travelling device. I was sort of talking, us humans, or as we stand in this, having this life experience that we're having, we need, or the majority need, some form of something to hold our faith, or to have faith in. So furthering on the conversation, my dad, so Grandad at Bardware, classes him, if you need to put a tag on something, he said, I am a humanist pagan. I quite like this. And that means that he is pagan as in he works with, loves and respects the elements of the earth. So the sun, the moon, the stars, the wind, the rain, the side of it, the moon cycles, the seasons that go round, the nature that's involved in all of that. And the humanist side is that he believes that God entity that some of us put up in the sky, he believes is within yourself. And I think actually that's quite a good thing, because then I furthered on talking to this person about the conversation about putting things out in the universe. And this is where we touch on the Carl Jungian unconscious, collective unconscious, as he calls it. So we were then talking about that, saying about, well, when you put things, we put things out in the universe. And you've got to take this back to sort of tribal caveman days. So tribal caveman days, we were a lot more in tune with each other than we are now. We had that 6th, 7th sense, probably caveman days, we probably all had ADHD and Asperger's, and we can't say Asperger's anymore, but, ADHD and some form of being on the spectrum, as we're all classed, or some of us are classed. And I think there would have been a lot more of that around, because I honestly, seriously think that sometimes, especially ADHD, I think it's that 6th sense of being hypersensitive to the world around you. we would have had that collective strong telepathic source that would have said people were in trouble, or there was something coming, or the tribe was in danger, or the wind, there's a storm coming. We would have been a lot more in touch with it than what we are now. So with that in mind, I then thought along the same lines as in, okay, it's called a collective unconscious. So if you are putting out into the universe, up to your god or gods, or putting it out there, if you're putting it out into the universe, here's another theory for you. So if you're putting it out into the universe, and you're putting that you possibly want something, or somebody to call, or something to manifest, are those other people that involved in that possible solution or thought pattern, are they then subconsciously or unconsciously picking that up, which then in turn is creating a chain of events which will then come back to you, the ripple effect, then come back to you to then conclude that thought pattern that you put out into the universe. So then that figures down to the Carl Jung archetypes of the collective unconscious, that we are all as one. And then that also puts down to the whole humanist pagan, as in the God is within you, because you're then projecting that out. Interesting. It was one of those conversations. I mean, I know we all need faith, and I think we all need something to hold on to, which I understand the God concept. I understand the goddess concept. I also understand the romanticist side of it. So there's a lot of storytelling. I mean, Jesus, I completely agree that he existed. I completely agree he was a person. Absolutely, 100%. I think his life and his stories have been elaborated on. And I think he was a very, very nice chap. I think he was a very nice guy, and I think he was very helpful. And I think he would try to help he would literally give you the shirt off his back. And I definitely think he was a healer. Absolutely, he was a healer. He was a medic. He was a good Samaritan. He was an agony uncle. He was there to help people. I really do 100% truly believe that. But his story has been elaborated and used to manipulate people over the thousands and thousands of years that it's thousands of years that it's been around. Which is, that's unfortunate. That's a human being trait. If we're to take on human being traits, or people do take on the traits of being human beings. I'm stepping down a very dangerous route here, because there's bound to be people that disagree with me. Which is fine, because this is, obviously this is my opinion, and, no opinion is right, but that's what I feel. I've always felt he's a jolly nice chap. That sounds a bit lucid. It's not like that. He wasn't just a jolly nice chap. He was a jolly good chap. He was a bit more than that. He was someone very special, but I think he's been very much elaborated on and created a story, because the Bible was written like 100 years after he was here. So, you take with that as you will. Anywho, that's another story. And I love the Norse mythology. I love Norse mythology. Absolutely love Norse mythology. I love that whole, raw type thing. But again, that's me. And again, that's another belief system, isn't it? The Norse gods, Thor and Odin, and slightly more believable, possibly. Not quite sure, but again, it's stories, and It just makes you think. But then also stories and nursery rhymes and folklore all they stem from something, they root from something. So do they root from someone's imagination, or do they root from somebody's life experience that then expands? Interesting. Could be that, I mean, the one thing I do know when we're looking at sort of things that are out there, I do think we all still hold that telepathic, we are all one, we all still have that connection, that telepathic connection, that subconscious, unconscious that Carl Jung talks about. And I do think that probably 10% of stuff that happens is our co-padres unconscious picking up on what's going on. I mean, there's been times when you put it out there and your thought pattern of, I wish so and so, or you talk about so and so to a friend and so rings you, or so and so walks around the corner. That's I think that's the unconscious collective working there. But then I also definitely do believe in, obviously, us as a human transportation device. The inside does not die. That does carry on, because I've seen it and I felt it and I know it and I know it's been poked. So do they put it in place for things to happen? So when we're talking about a single God, is it we're actually our ancestors and our friends and family that have passed that guide us or create or put into place things that we ask for? So are they doing it rather than a God or gods? So is it them? And then the energies that we have inside us feed that. So then the God is within you, that energy is within you, so that entity is within you. So, because we all know that spirits or people that have passed this plane and their soul still from, they absorb our happiness, and we give them, that energy to. So is it a case that we put energy into something that we put out into the universe? You ask for something and you put your energy into it. Do they pick up on it and then create that, or put things into play for that to happen? It's an interesting thought pattern. As I say, I know, talking to this person the other day, one of those conversations you sat and you thought, well, yeah, this is quite interesting. And it's one I've actually been able to carry on and yab about, and I've not stopped. It was something I was going to cover at a later date, but I've obviously been pushed into doing it. So yeah, I mean, the one thing I do, I think if you're sort of at that point in a crossroads, where you're sort of a bit like me. I mean, I'm forever asking questions. I'm forever asking questions. I'm pagan to my roots. I know I am, because I see the seasons change in front of me. I feel different energies of different moons, and I know it's there. But is that in touch with my ancestral? Am I getting in touch with my tribal instincts rather than following a pagan path? Is it just, I mean, pagan is something that's non-Christian. Pagan was put, pagan, the Romans used the word pagan because it was non-godly, and you weren't following, a Catholic religion. You weren't following one God. That God or gods, you were something else. So is it just the fact that people that are pagan are in touch with their tribal instincts? I don't know. And then is it everything else that's put everything else into being pagan? So your pagan deities and gods and Herne and the Oak King and the Holly King. But they're all seasonal again, aren't they? You know, the Oak King and the Holly King is all seasonal. It's all turning of the seasons. So it all goes down to back to that tribal thing of watching the seasons turn. And that's one thing you can be sure of. That's one thing that you can see in front of you, is the seasons turning and the earth moving. And I know that's where my pagan roots, I know that feels good with me. That sits comfortably. I love watching the seasons change. I love watching and feeling the moon change. Not quite sure on a full moon. Has different effects on me depending on what's going on. Yeah, just an interesting. I thought I'd chuck it in there and see what people thought. Really, it's one of those things that go around in your head. But if you've never heard of Carl Jung, and that's spelled Jung, I definitely recommend. I've probably mentioned him before in a podcast, but I would definitely recommend that you dap on up and have a look at what he is talking about. And I would recommend that you listen to an audio book rather than read it, because I think if you read it, you just wouldn't absorb it. So if you can listen to it an audio book or audio form or a short course on him, definitely highly recommend, because it was probably the most amazing piece of channeled information I've ever had, to be fair. It was mind-blowing. And if I ever get anything like that again, I will be very honoured. But then that in itself, you know, of all the free audio courses they could have shoved in my direction, I got one of those. See, was that put in place because I'd asked for something? Yeah, I don't know. You see, I don't know. Was that put in place by subconsciously by people around me, you know, not living people around me, you know, souls around me, entities around me. Oh, it's very windy. If you can hear it being very windy, I'm stood underneath the oak tree in the pony field. There you go, see, stood underneath the oak tree. That's another thing, you see, Oak King. Now, is that, stood here by this beautiful oak tree, which is probably nigh on 250 years old, probably 300 years old, this oak tree. So it's massive, you can imagine it. It's enormous. You know, when you look at a bark of an oak tree, then you can see faces in it. You know, has that come from there? But then they're very warm. You know, you stand by a tree and you can feel it, can't you? You can feel its roots and safety. You can feel the safeness of it, of being stood under a tree of this magnificent. I mean, you know, she's pretty stunning, to be fair. I keep calling her a she. I always have called you a she. Well, oak trees are a bit of both, aren't they? They're neither one nor the other. But yeah, I just I can see why you can sort of see faces in oak trees, and you get, you know, the Oak King and things. But anywho, I'm digressing. It's 22 minutes in. I better go and do something other than doing a podcast, which is very useful. But I better go and do something else that's useful. So I will leave that train of thought with you for today. And hope you're having a fabulous day, whatever you are doing. Keep shining bright, keep pondering, and keep asking questions. Lots of love to you all. Bye for now.